Welcome. In this video, you'll get ideas from home gardeners, HOAs, and landscape designers who have a vision for their desert gardens. Enjoy.
By now you've heard that the state of California is in a period of prolonged drought. A couple years ago, Riverside County was declared in a water emergency, same with the state of California. Although here in the Coachella Valley we're in no imminent danger of losing our water supply, we're still very concerned about the amount of water that we have here in the Coachella Valley, good, clean groundwater. And over the years, we've been taking that water out of our ground. The level of the water is going down more rapidly than we'd like to see. So what can we do about that? We can concentrate on water conservation. And a best way to do that right here in the Coachella Valley is by concentrating on saving water outdoors. 70 to 80% of all the water we use here is used outdoors on the landscape. So when you're thinking about saving water, that's the place to start. All these years you've seen the Coachella Valley with these green turf lawns. Those are not exactly the most water efficient in the world. If you were to put in an equivalent amount of water efficient landscape, a beautiful desert type landscape that you can see right behind me, then you can save 50 to 70% of the water that you would actually use on that turf. So as we go around the Coachella Valley, we're seeing more and more of the landscapes changed out from green turf that uses a lot of water to beautiful water efficient landscapes. So that's something that you can really do to save water here. And I encourage you to go and just see what you can do. Go to the local nursery, see all the beautiful plants they have. Visit one of our gardens here. The City of Palm Desert has a beautiful garden, the Living Desert. There's all kinds of good examples of beautiful water efficient landscapes around the Coachella Valley. I really encourage you to work at saving the water outdoors on the landscape, maybe even changing out some of that turf and putting in beautiful desert landscape.
We can no longer ignore the demands for water conservation. Here's an example of the changing face of the desert, transitioning from grass to desert landscaping.
For some, life is the desert. Now let's watch this next segment.
Welcome to Silver Sands Racquet Club. Like a lot of communities in the valley, this particular complex was developed in the mid-80s and settled predominantly by folks from the Pacific Northwest who came down to enjoy the winter and be surrounded by the foliage they were used to, which was lots of lush grass, flowering annuals, and shrubs and hedges. The problem, of course, is that we live in a desert with triple-digit temperatures for half the year. When those snowbirds went back home, the property here was a disaster. So those of us who were year-round residents took the initiative in trying to move this community from its reliance on a type of landscaping that's not very well adapted to the desert to desert landscaping. The example behind me is something we did with a utility access area where the power company needs access to those main panels. They were difficult to trim around when they were grass. They were rutted with mud from the utility tractors that drove over there with parts to service them, and they just never looked good. So what we did here was do desert landscaping around them with bubbler irrigation. They're surrounded with cassia, which is a drought and heat tolerant shrub. It blooms all through the spring with gorgeous yellow flowers. It provides a much more concealing backdrop than the annuals that we tried unsuccessfully to plant there in the past. We're particularly pleased with the effect we were able to achieve with desert landscaping around our street monuments. There are 56 street monuments inside our little complex, and as you can see, they represented a real challenge for trimming and landscape maintenance. We're using drought and heat resistant species exclusively inside here. No more annuals. We've completely eliminated our budget for flowering annuals. It simply didn't work. They cannot withstand the high summer temperatures. They look awful, so they fail aesthetically, and they don't meet any landscape test. They require constant watering. They require a spray head type irrigation that throws a lot of extra water onto the stucco, out into the street. It's wasted in both cases, and it damages the stucco. So this was a win-win in that we got a more attractive look that's appropriate to the season we're living in. We save water and we preserve the stucco finish. Our community is blessed with 15 pools and spas for our 250 homeowners, so it was especially important to find a landscaping solution to the problems we were having caused by planting flowering annuals around the perimeter of the pool and then watering them with a spray head high enough to cover the area gave us runoff onto the pool deck and potentially into the pool, which is a public health violation for us because we use recycled water. So Desert Landscaping came to our rescue again here by giving us a nice perimeter line, again with the concrete curbing, so that it's low maintenance. The mowers don't disrupt the curbing, they don't disrupt the plants because the plants are all sturdy, desert-tolerant plants. I'm standing by this beautiful Agave Americana as an example of the kind of propagation that we're able to do once we have an established desert landscape going on. We get all these pups around the base of the agaves and the cacti as well, of course, and we're able to have several small nurseries in private locations around the property, around the 56 acres here, so that we can harvest these pups, save them, and use them for new areas of desert landscaping. Not a very durable look for our climate, of course, as you can see here. So this really well-manicured, very low-maintenance look, also more conserving of water, so you don't get overspray on your patio, staining your tile or discoloring your concrete, tends to persuade people over time that they want what their neighbors have. And we now have a backlog of homeowners signing up to put in this kind of improvement, which we cost share with them. We're making a good start, I think, in terms of gathering increasing support from among the homeowners for a more conservative use of water and a vastly increased use of indigenous plant materials.
Our landscaping takes 25% of our annual budget, and it's a very high percentage. Of course, the biggest percentage of it is the water. We're working with CVWD now, the Coachella Valley Water District, trying to stay within the bounds of the amount of water they've allocated to us. It's very difficult. A small mistake on your watering can be a large mistake on your irrigation bill. We found that to be true.
It's less looking like a jungle and more look like hopefully an oasis here in the desert. Our complex is 30 plus years old, and many of these plants were planted 30 plus years ago, and they've grown up to the point where it wasn't attractive, nor was it economical as far as water use is concerned. We hope to be able to cut back on our total water consumption. I think that they like to bring a little part of the Pacific Northwest down here to the desert, and I don't think that's practical, not in this day and age.
It's all here in the mountains and the desert.
Here we are at the Reserve Club to show desert gardeners that things can look good in August. I have a beautiful Queen's Wreath vine blooming here. I like the Reserve Club because it's a leader in desert landscapes. We're very innovative in the use of drip irrigation and the minimalization of turf. I think one of the keys to a smart desert project is utilizing the site and the materials on the site right from the get-go. When the planning of this property started, there was an inventory of trees done, and they worked around some special trees. The way this road bends here included this large tree right behind me. That tree was preserved on the site. The leaves were washed off occasionally because of all the dust created through construction, and it was preserved because it's such an essential element to the landscape. You have a beautiful tree like the one back here. You don't want to crowd it with another tree right next to it. The arrangement of the space is very, very important because any landscape, even the desert landscapes, do require maintenance. They are low maintenance, but they're not no maintenance. Here we are in a desert courtyard. I really love this space where cactus and succulents and Madagascar palms have been used as sculpture, and they've been arranged in such a way that makes it very inviting, and it's a very private space. Very low water use, and you get lots and lots of contrasting colors and contrasting shapes. Make it very interesting where you get the columns of the saguaro cactus and the legginess of the ocotillo beyond, and different types of barrel cactus. Really an enjoyable space where hardly a drop of water is wasted. Above this courtyard, and give us some shade in the afternoon, is a smoke tree, native to our valley, native to the washes in this valley. This tree was probably dug up off this property prior to the mass grading and then planted here. And just beyond that is a native blue palo verde tree, Circidium floridum, and it's a mainstay here for the Coachella Valley landscape. It's one of the anchor trees. You can always rely on the palo verde trees to give us shade and provide habitat for birds, very low water uses, very few problems with pests. So these trees help provide some afternoon shade in this courtyard, which we all want that here in the Coachella Valley, a little afternoon shade in your private, personal gardens. This design is an arrangement of space using ground covers like the verbena and succulents like the Dazzlerium wheeleri. They've been grouped with boulders to make the landscape very interesting, very appealing.
The best garden is the one that fits the gardener and the home it surrounds. Check out this garden.
Hi, welcome to my own private little desert oasis. This is a house that I bought a little over 3 years ago, and shortly after acquiring it, I decided I wanted to do desert landscaping. I did most of the work myself. I started by designing it. I had a vision in my mind as to what I thought I'd like to do, and I put it to paper and kind of tweaked it over a period of a few weeks. And then I started by first removing all of the original grass, getting rid of every single plant in the yard. That was probably the best thing I ever could have done. By getting rid of the grass and putting in the drip irrigation system, I was amazed that just in the front yard alone, after removing the grass, my summer water bill went from over $100 a month down to just $30. The whole project probably took me 3 months. I wasn't working continuously, maybe a little bit each day or several hours a day. And as you can see, most of the plants have been in the ground, including the trees, for less than 3 years. But they've already grown incredibly. Even the trees have been pruned at least twice, and they're still quite large. But I'm trying to keep on top of everything. I maintain the entire yard myself. It turned out to be a very affordable project considering the end result. I don't have to pay to have my yard reseeded. I don't pay to have a gardener, as I maintain everything myself. And my water bill has gone down dramatically. So it's a win-win situation. I'm delighted that I did it. I think it's a responsible thing for any homeowner to do. We're all trying to conserve water. And I'm very pleased with the results. My neighbors seem to be thrilled. I've been an inspiration to a few of them who have started their own desert landscaping projects. And I hope you'll take a look around and enjoy what you see. I'm very proud of it. So I thank you for coming today.
Our desert is not for the eyes of the superficial observer. The desert reveals its true character to those who are able to see its gifts. Let's talk with our next guest as he reveals the gifts of his desert garden.
Welcome to my garden. About 5 years ago, when I bought this house, I had all lawn and ficus trees all the way down behind me and in front of me. And I decided I wanted a desert garden here. That's one of the reasons why I moved to Palm Springs from Long Beach. I always liked desert plants, and I thought I'd like to have a desert garden. I also figured it would be a good idea. I'd save some money with my water bill, and I would have plants that I would enjoy. So I decided to find a landscape designer that could help me come up with a plan. And I was interested in the right look for the house. I thought the ficus trees in the lawn was boring, plus wasteful. And so he came up with a design that probably went further than I ever imagined. It included a lot of hardscape. As you can see, none of these walls were here before. This was just the lawn that I'm standing on right now. So we have boulders and gravel and a number of different kinds of desert plants. I was able to get rid of my gardener for $300 a month, who was primarily mowing lawns, and I hire a helper for $50 a month, and my water bill is cut in half. I'm able to take care of a lot of it myself, because it just amounts to weeding and pruning a little bit here and there and enjoying it. Originally, I had thought that I would re-landscape the front yard only, but after getting that underway, decided that it would be a good idea to carry the same desert landscape theme over into the backyard. And so we came up with design. Prior to what you see, there was just a lawn with a row of, like a hedge along the back wall. So the design included the boulders, the landscaping material, the water feature for the fountain. And obviously you can see a selection of a variety of different desert plants. Then we go over and you can see on the far right there is a lawn. And I had to make a decision as to whether to keep some of it. The reason I kept that part of the lawn is because I have a sport court there. And it seemed to make sense to keep it as the best way for people to play volleyball or badminton on the lawn rather than some other material. So I kept that, and I have a real nice battery-operated mower that I mow that little bit of lawn myself. So that saves me a lot of money too.
If you scratch a desert, you'll produce a garden, and that's just what our next gardener is doing. Let's take a peek.
We started back in last October. I'd written about a refund from the city of La Quinta and the water company for $1,000, and it kind of gave me an incentive to do the yard in desert landscaping. Because I thought with the water shortage coming up and everybody's saying we're having a problem getting water and the price of the water, I thought it'd be a good time to take advantage of the rebate. So my buddy and I, we're both, almost 70 years old, and we thought we'd give it something to do. So we took upon it ourselves to take the grass all out with a machine that we rented. And then we also really reduced my water bill, like about, I'd say my third to a half. So it really cut back, plus all the work I don't have to do now. I don't have to cut the grass, and it just really helped a lot. And we're getting a lot of compliments from all the neighbors and people that are driving by. So I think it's an asset to the neighborhood having this. And plus, we just enjoy it ourselves. This is very economical. The water also, like the front, because it's all drip. So everything is taken care of with just a drip system. It doesn't use a lot of water, which I like. Plus the maintenance is very low because you don't have any trimming to do, very little.
I wanted to welcome you to the UC Riverside's Palm Desert Graduate Center campus. The campus was built just about 5 years ago on undeveloped land. So we've had an opportunity to really think about what kind of landscaping we want to do here from square one. There's a couple of considerations we had. We wanted to think about improving wildlife habitat. We wanted to think about reducing water use to the extent possible. We wanted to provide an educational opportunity so that we can have people here learn about native landscaping. And finally, and perhaps more importantly, we wanted to do some real research. We are a research institution, and we wanted to look at exactly what kind of energy reduction, or that we're not using energy, we're not using water if we use natives or as much water. So that's all of those are important concepts in putting this garden together. But we're trying to do something that's really quite innovative. We're using just native plants, certainly desert plants because they're native, but just native plants. And we're trying to recreate the various biomes that are native to the Coachella Valley. Once we do that, we're going to then be able to measure water use in each and every one of these communities to see exactly which are the most water thrifty. How can we dial back the water and still keep these plants looking good, but use the least amount of water possible? We're also going to create an area right in here where we're going to create a demonstration garden where we're going to scale our gardens to the size of somebody's yard. And we're going to sort of challenge some local landscape architects to create 3 or 4 vignettes of just as nice looking of landscaping as they can do with native plants, and then we're going to very carefully measure the water use in each of those vignettes. So we're going to have that kind of real data that's going to show you exactly how much water you're going to use, how much money you would save if you were to plant your garden or your landscaping just like that, and at the same time create an educational experience for everybody in the Coachella Valley to come and visit. And on top of that, we're going to hopefully create some great wildlife habitats. So we're going to have butterflies and hummingbirds and various lizards and all those sorts of things that are losing habitat because we're shifting everything to grass and date palms, which are of course not native here to the valley.
The desert is a natural place that draws you in. Look at how one homeowner captures your attention.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining me today in my desert garden. This desert garden is fairly mature. It's about 6 to 7 years old. Where I'm standing used to be all grass. After I paid my gardeners to come every week and mow and blow and didn't get me anywhere except spending money, I decided that I needed to do something myself. And so I basically took out all my grass, redid the sprinkler system to handle drip irrigation, and started putting in plants. The uniqueness about the garden that I have here is that I'm a plant collector. There's a multitude of plants here, primarily cactus, agaves, yuccas, aloes, and euphorbias, and several others too. One of the important things about having a desert garden is certainly shade. Now I'm under a tree right here. Shade in the summertime is really important for a lot of your desert plants, even more important than water. I've collected several of these plants. I'd like to look at this small garden over here to my left, and this used to be a rose garden. Roses didn't do too much for me, although they grow well in the desert. But this is a collection of special agaves, aloes, and some cactus. And I buy most of my plants. I try to get them locally if I can, but I pretty much have most of the local nursery plants. So I buy most of mine now either through the mail, nurseries in Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, or I go to specialized nurseries over on the Southern California coast. The uniqueness about this garden is that it is a multitude of different plants. Some make it, some don't. My advice to most people, if they're going to put in a desert garden, would be one, to start out small and just see what that does. I love every desert garden that I look at. There's no way to do a wrong or right desert garden. You just have to basically look at what you feel you want to plant, what represents you, and then put it in. The other element that's important to note is to have some flexibility. This garden is changing all the time. I'm still taking out plants that the original gardeners put in and replacing them with specialized plants that I get elsewhere. And so flexibility is really important.
For some, life is the desert. Now let's watch this next segment.
Hi, I'm Glenn Huntington and welcome to my front yard. I put this yard in about 5 years ago. When I bought this house, like every house, like my neighbors on both sides, it had lawn. So to distinguish this yard, I put in a mow strip, a very wide mow strip, to keep their Bermuda grass out of my yard. We dug up the lawn and we contoured the yard. We went down and selected the boulders and placed them. And basically I selected plants based on how large they will ultimately get, because I work multiple jobs and don't really have time to be out in the yard very much. So I put things in that are basically going to take care of themselves and not need very much pruning at all. The only pruning I've done in the front yard are the trees, because they were about 3 feet high when I first put them in. So about every 6 months I go out and shape them a little bit and thin them out slightly. This is a windy area, so one of the reasons for selecting these plants too are plants that hold up well in the wind and the heat. The yard gets watered about once every other day in the summertime and about once a week in the wintertime. And I think boulders are important because when you look at a desert landscape, you're largely looking at rocks in one form or another: sand, boulders, gravel. I put the color in to match the color of the house so that it gave the yard a little bit more organic quality, to almost look as if the house was arising out of the landscape.
Many assume desert gardens are barren and without life, but the opposite is true. With the natural and the wild come hummingbirds and butterflies.
Okay, hi, and welcome to our yard. We moved here in 1996, and at that time this was lush grass and beautiful flowers. And shortly afterwards we found out that the flowers die and the grass does too. So we decided, after about 3 years, we decided to go with the desert landscaping. And we had a landscaper come in who designed it and moved everything around and did an absolutely wonderful job. The cost was approximately, for the front yard,
about $22,000.
About $22,000 was the initial cost. In the past 10 years since it's been done, we've saved approximately $32,000 between landscapers, changing of the grass, changing of the flowers, approximately $800 a year alone in water, which equates to about $8,000 over the past 10 years.
We have 2 dogs, and most people that thinking about changing landscaping over to desert landscaping say, well, what are the dogs going to do? They need a place to go in the yard. We've had 4 dogs since we've been here, and none of them have had any problems with the desert landscaping whatsoever. Thank you.
What we have in common with the gardeners in the video is our passion for gardening. Now is the time to create your garden to reflect a water-wise landscape design. Your outdoor garden is your connection to the desert. Thanks for watching.